Oh, why are you up so early?
Because of the program. I wanted to
Oh,
see.
oh,
I,
so sweet. Wow.
Beta, I wake up this time only, but
Huh.
don't leave the bed.
Like mummy only. Mummy does the same thing.
Where are you driving?
Maybe I'm in the mummy and daddy's driveway. I'm coming home for the weekend, so I was just in the driveway.
Okay.
Here too. See, I don't know where I went. Hi, Bhaiya. Hi, Krishna. Okay, I had the program ready to go. I need to turn the sound off. Mummy's will echo.
Okay, yeah.
Manju, I'll leave. I'll listen from you then. I'm leaving.
Take it, Mummy. I'm coming into the garage right now. Okay. Hello, Mummy. Okay. Send the YouTube link. Daddy said no one from India would join.
Munna is here for 4:30 in the morning. Is here?
Yeah. Okay, that's 8 o'clock. Or
Okay,
6 o'clock.
not
6
6.
o'clock. 6 o'clock.
Okay, well, Hare Krishna Vinnaji, we're going to let's start the chanting, please.
You did. Auntie, you're scheduled to sing tonight for Sridhar. Can you? Oh, there
Yes,
you are.
yes, yes.
Perfect.
No,
Thank
I
you.
was asking for 10 minutes or 15 minutes.
10 minutes.
Oh, okay, okay. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devim Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschataste Satarine Namaste Saraswati Devim Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschataste Satarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna
Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri
Advaita
Gadadhar
Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jai Radha Natvar Radha Natvar Radhe,
Jaya Radha Natvar Radha Natvar Radhe,
Jaya Radha Vallabh Radha Vallabh Radhe,
Jaya Radha Vallabh Radha Vallabh Radhe,
Jaya Radha Raman Radha Raman Radhe,
Jaya Radha Raman Radha Raman Radhe,
Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe.
Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe.
Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe.
Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe.
Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe.
Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe.
Hari bol, Hari bol, Hari bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari bol, Hari bol, Hari bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev.
Jaya
Gurudev, Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Auntie. Thank you, Uncle. Auntie, do you mind being my responder for Yashomati Nandan?
Yeah, I will.
Thank you. Yashomati Nandana Brajabaranagara Gokula Ranjana Kana
Jashamati Nandana Braj Nagar Gokula Ranjana Kana.
Gopi Paranadana Madana Manohara
Gopi Paranadhana Madana Manohara
Kaliyadamana Vidana
Kaliya Damana Vidhana
Amalahari Mamiya Vilasa
Amala Harina Mamiya Vilasa
Vipina Purandara Navina Nagarabara
Bipina Purandara Navina Nagara Pada
Vamsi Vadana Suvasa
Bansi Badana Suwasa
Braja Janapalana Surakulanasana
Braja Jana Palana Surkulana Sana
Nanda Godana Rakovala
Nanda Godhana Rakhavala
Govinda Madhava Navanita Taskara
Govinda Madhava Navanita Taskara
Sundarananda Gopala
Sundarananda Gopala
Yamuna Tatachara Gopi Vasanara
Jamuna Tat Chara Gopi Basana Hara
Rasa Rasika Kripa Moya
Rasa Rasika Kripamaya
Shri Radhavala Natavara
Shri Radha Vallabha Vrindavana Natvara
Bhakti Vinodashraya
Bhakti Vinodashaya.
Okay, the translation. Krishna is the beloved son of Mother Yashoda, the transcendental lover in the land of Raja, the delight of Gokul, Kana, a nickname of Krishna, the wealth of the lives of the gopis. He steals the mind of even Cupid and punishes the Kaliya serpent. These pure holy names of Lord Hari are full of sweet nectarian pastimes. Krishna is the Lord of the 12 forests of Raja. He is ever youthful and is the best of love. He is always playing on a flute, and he is an excellent dresser. Krishna is the protector of the inhabitants of Raja, the destroyer of demonic dynasties, the keeper and tender of Nanda Maharaj's cows, the giver of pleasure to the cows, land, and spiritual senses, the husband of the goddess of fortune, the butter thief, and the beautiful cowherd boy of Nanda Maharaj. Krishna wanders along the banks of river Yamuna. He stole the garments of the young damsels of Raja who were bathing there. He delights in the mellows of the rasa dance. He is very merciful, the lover and beloved of Srimati Radharani, the great dancer of Vrindavan, and the shelter and only refuge of Thakur Bhaktivinoda. So today, we welcome back His Holiness Hanuman Preshik Maharaj. Maharaj, it's been entirely too long. Thank you for joining us.
Can you hear my voice, sir?
Yes, Maharaj, we can hear you.
I am 5,000 miles away.
Yep, in the heart of Peru.
Yeah. Did you see the Govardhan Hill?
Yes, Maharaj, it's very tempting.
It was
You
very
need to
nice.
bring it back so we can have some prasad here.
Okay, well, yeah, but
You-
yeah, if I try and bring it back to Nashville, maybe it'll make me want to urinate along the way, and I'll have to put it down.
As long as you stop, as long as you stop it in Murfreesboro, that'll be fine.
Okay. Wow, yeah. So we did. We went to the temple today with our. I mean, the picture there. Maybe you saw our camera guy. He was sitting there. He's a professional graduate. Everything else, works for a big television channel. But he's the guy who's been taking the movies for our director. So he went to the temple and worked very hard today. It was very nice. But today, of course, this whole month is what do you say, Kartik? No, Kartik Damodar month, and so many pastimes of Krishna are being glorified during this month. Okay, can you see our screen? Yeah, you can see it. Yeah. Okay, so I have a PowerPoint show here. We made a little bit. We go up. There we go. Can Abhishek Ji, can you see our screen?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay. So here's very, very nice artist representation of Krishna holding up Govardhan Hill with Nanda Maharaj, Yashoda, everybody else. Yeah. I guess Abhishek, you can be our chief guest here. Govardhan Puja 2021, November 5th, Srimad Bhagavatam 3:232. And this third canto is when Vidura meets Uddhava. And it's so nice because he asks him about all of our friends and everybody else, the Yadu dynasty, the Kurus, everybody else, how they're doing. And the Uddhava then tells him about Vrindavan. So it's just like, in 2 chapters, it's like a wonderful little Krishna book with Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan as selected by Uddhava, and then Krishna's pastimes out of Vrindavan is selected by Uddhava. So these are the 2 verses which kind of relate to this special pastime. Please repeat. Aya Jaya Go Sabena.
Ayayayad Go Savena.
Gopa Rajang Dvijotamaihi.
Gopa Rajam Dvijatomai.
Vitasya Koru Bharasya.
Vitasya Koro Bharasya.
Shakir Shansad Vyayam Vibhu.
Chikara Sansad Vayam Vibhu.
The Supreme Lord, Uddhava tells Vidura, Krishna, desired to utilize the opulent financial strength of Nanda Maharaj Nanda, for the worship of the cows. And also he wanted to give a lesson to Indra, the king of heaven. Thus he advised his father to perform worship of Go, or the pasturing land and the cows, with the help of learned brahmanas. Okay, next slide. Can you see that now?
Yes, Maharaj.
Oh, this is incredible. We were struggling with all these things. Today the some more of our lighting got put in. Now 2 of the rooms have full, studio lighting qualities, and we're getting our calendar set with who's going to be coming, certain dates. And before, the upload speed was 1 megabyte per second, which would take 5 minutes to transfer this slide. So we had to solve that problem. So here's the next verse. Varsha Tindre Vraja Kopad.
Varsha Tindre Vrajakopad.
Bhagna Mane TV Balaha.
Bhagnamane TV Tala.
Gotra Lila Tapatraina.
Gotra Lila Tapatrena.
Trato Badranu Grinata.
Tato Badra Nagugrinata.
Varshata in pouring water. Indre by Indra, the king of heaven. Vrajaha, the land of cows, Vrindavan. Kopat, Bhag Namane, having been in anger or being insulted. Ati, highly. Vivalaha, perturbed. You know, as it go, 6 Goswamis were Shri Govardhana Kalpapada Patale Kalandi Vanye Kutaha Goshantabiti Sarvato Braje Pare Kedai Mahavivalo. This is the same thing, Vivalo. Perturbed, Mahavivalo. Gotra, the hill for the cows. Lila Atapatrena, by the pastime umbrella. Trataha, were protected. Bhadra, O sober one. Anugrinata, by the merciful Lord. Varsad Tindre Vrajakupad Bhagna Mane Tivich Valaha. Gotra Lilata Patrena Tato Badr Anugrinata. And so he's calling him sober one. It's not that these are just stories that are being told, legends or myths, you know, but he's saying this is a very, very sober person talking about very practical things. So the translation, Srila Prabhupada, O sober Vidura, King Indra, his honor having been insulted, poured water incessantly on Vrindavan. And thus the inhabitants of Braja, the land of cows, were greatly distressed. But the compassionate Lord Krishna saved them from danger with his pastime umbrella, the Govardhan hill. So big blocks of ice were falling and the rain was flooding, so one could not distinguish any place that was really land almost. You know? And when Lord Brahma took the cowherd boys, put them into a very gentle sleep and took them off to a nice place. Okay, when he brought them back, Krishna was a little upset with him because he should have known better. It seems like that's the reason. But Indra wasn't dealing with the Brijbasis kindly. It says he was trying to kill them. My goodness, he just went completely crazy. You know, because Indra is a devotee. But a very, very good lesson that we're learning from this and other people is that we can go crazy if we have any kind of attachment in our heart. You know? It's like a very, very big bull, a little ring in his nose, right? A little ring, and you can take him anywhere, even though he weighs, you know, so much more powerful. So even though we become so purified, we have to go ahead and become completely purified by coming to the level of bhava, intense devotional service. You know? And unless we do, then we can act just as abominably as Indra. Indra may be much better devotee than we are, but he was trying to kill the Brijbasis. He's become so crazy. You know, what's the word? Kopat Bhagnamane, having been in anger on being insulted. You know. So this is kind of a little bit of the summary of the pastime. And of course, it was always mentioned, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopajana Balava Giri Varadari. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Vrindavan, Sri Govinda Gopinath, Madana Mohan, Shama Kunda, Radha Kunda, Giri Govardhan. So Krishna is very, very famous as a lifter of Govardhan Hill. You know? And Ram is very, very famous because he made big rocks and mountains float. So both of them are into this pastime of lifting mountains and making them float in so many ways like that. Yeah. So Girivaradari, of course, Kamsa, when he's trying to minimize, Krishna's nature and out of fear and everything else, he says, "Oh, he killed an insignificant water snake, and they're glorifying him, Kaliya. And he lifted a little rock known as Govardhan, and they're glorifying him." But Govardhan was very big. In the Garga Samhita, it describes that when Krishna was arranging to come to the material world to take care of the problems described by Bhumi and Brahma, and also to show everybody what it's like in Vrindavan. It's very nice, but it's very simple in some ways. Very simple. If we go there now, we see the same Vrindavan. But what's the thing? Is that everybody and everything in Vrindavan is trying to serve Krishna. The road is being covered over by construction cement, other paraphernalia, by water. But the roads in Vrindavan keep demanding, "No, I'm a road, I'm a road, I'm a road." So they're struggling just to maintain Shanta Ras in Vrindavan, other things like that. So Krishna came to show everybody not just the opulence of Vrindavan, but this wonderful opportunity to participate in Krishna's Leela. You're always thinking of how Vrindavan is like a Disneyland, such a wonderful, interesting place when you go with all your friends. At the last week or something in high school, they would have take all the senior students with their teachers. We'd all go to some amusement park and pick some place. So maybe you go to Disneyland with all your friends, and just like that, people are 16 years old, 17 years old. And the teachers are now in more like a friendly mood and stuff. So same way, Vrindavan is like that. All the boys and girls, Radha and Krishna, they're 16, 7, more less than that, 15, 16 years old. So it's such a wonderful place. So Vrindavan, again, is like a Disneyland, only like about 20% completed. So many wonderful things, fun things to do. We can't even imagine, how much there is to participate with Krishna, and always expanding the amazement of Krishna, the gopis, Maharaj, Nanda, Yashoda, like that. And so when Krishna comes to the material world, he brings all these things. So he was arranging, it describes in the Garga Samhita, and Radharani was looking and she was asking, "Can I come also?" He says, of course. But then she was having second thoughts and she said, "Well, but I can never leave Govardhan. Haridasa Varya, he's the greatest of all the devotees. And so I think maybe I don't want to go. I'll stay here." And Krishna's laughing and he said, "Govardhan's already there," like that. Of course, a wonderful story of how he got to Vrindavan. But he's Lord Chaitanya, whenever he would see Govardhan, he would have very, very nice prayer. Hantayam adra abala haridasa varya yad Rama Krishna charana sparasha pramoda manom tanoti sahago ganayos tayoryat. I can't remember the rest. Kanda mulai. Oh friend, just see this Govardhan. He's the greatest of all devotees, Haridasa Varya. His hairs are standing erect in the form of blades of grass because Rama and Krishna are walking on him. He supplies always a very nice, tasty grass, fresh, sweet water, and beautiful trees full of singing birds and fruits and flowers. Manom tanoti sahago ganayos tayoryat. I can't remember the last part. I have to refresh it. So Lord Chaitanya would chant this verse, nice verse to memorize or to refresh today. So this is kind of made a little bit of perspective from the devotees, but there's something very important coming up. And this is what Prabhupada would deal with. Prabhupada would challenge the devotees about different pastimes in Vrindavan. He'd say, "Well, what's the scientific explanation?" So can you see our screen, Abhishek? Next slide.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, so it says, you look on the Wikipedia here about religion. It says about 84% of the world's population is affiliated with Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, or some form of folk religion. Okay, that's amazing. This is from 2012. Things have changed, but it was 9 years. But still, it's just amazing. You think, oh, so many people are actually materialistic and atheistic, but they're affiliated in some way, 84%. So in terms of preaching to people, in terms of their religious perspective, there's so much opportunity. Interfaith dialogue is such a wonderful opportunity because people have some perspective like that. But the next question is, how many of them actually believe that Jesus Christ had a mother who was a virgin, okay, or that 5 wise men came from the east following a star that would travel at night, you know? Or that Jesus brought the dead back to life, or he walked on water, you know. Well, you know, these things they happened, you know, but they have no good reasoning ability. And maybe sometimes if you get to Hinduism or things like that, people are going to say, well, these are just myths. You know, those are little smaller like incidents in Christianity and Judaism and like that, Islam, little things that stand out. But the Vedas, the Bhagavatam, is presenting a thoroughgoing, shift in reality, thoroughgoing. 5,000 years ago, all these things were so different. You know, people were living 1,000 years. Jarashanda was showing up with 140 quadrillion gillion soldiers. Nanda Maharaj had more cows than there are bacteria in our sink. You know, so how do we justify all these things? It's a big question. And Govardhan Hill is a very good challenge. Do you actually believe that 5,000 years ago, a 5-year-old boy lifted a mountain so big that it had houses on it on his little finger? Yes, I believe. So Prabhupada was challenging this, the devotees. It's very important. You know? So amongst the systems by which they're establishing their ideas about the history of the world, and which again, many Christians and everybody else, they actually believe, well, yeah, we got to try and adjust these things in terms of science. The Britannica says carbon-14 dating, also called radiocarbon dating, is a method of age determination that depends upon the decay to nitrogen of radiocarbon-14. Carbon-14, because carbon, I think, normally is 12 or something like that, maybe 13. But the atomic number, the number of neutrons and protons in the nucleus. So carbon-14 is continuously formed in nature by the interaction of neutrons with nitrogen-14, okay, in the Earth's atmosphere. So somehow or other, maybe an extra neutron in the nucleus. In the Earth's atmosphere, the neutrons required for this reaction are produced by cosmic rays interacting with the atmosphere. So cosmic rays, I think, where we are, okay, some are coming from the cosmos, stars and places like that, but most of them are coming from the sun, great radiation from the sun, and it hits the Earth's atmosphere, and then it turns regular carbon, carbon gets nitrogen or something, okay? Yeah, nitrogen-14 gets an extra neutron or something and becomes carbon-14 or something like that. It's not exactly clear. But what happens, their idea is that this thing goes down and the plants take it in through photosynthesis and their daily activities. Then different species of life, human beings, cows, or even the trees, then accumulate this. And when they die, then there's no more carbon-14 being added. Okay. And of course, because it's unstable, it degenerates over time. It has a certain time over a certain number of years, it drops down by half-life. So their idea is, okay, let's look at the bones of Shakespeare, okay? You know, Shakespeare he died on this day, and so the amount of carbon-14 in his bones, was fixed at that day. And we can see how much is decayed. And then we can say, okay, this amount of decay in carbon-14 is equal to this amount of number of years gone by. Okay, now maybe we'll take some bones of Julius Caesar or somebody. We'll find something, some trees or some animals, which we're dating to our archaeological methods as being that old. Okay, so Julius Caesar's bones have this much carbon-14, the rest had decayed already back to nitrogen. So we make a little graph like this, and then because of this, we can find things and we say, oh, these bones were here 5,000 years ago. And we can see then that there was no Krishna, there were no big people like this and that going on, because these bones were primitive people with sloped skulls and all these kind of things. So this, of course, is one of the most prominent arguments is the carbon-14 dating, to say that there never was a Govardhan Hill, there never was a Dwapara Yuga. So looking at it a little bit, we're researching this because tomorrow we have to give a whole class on this in Spanish, But we're seeing that archaeology is such a big developed area. We were looking, for example, at one thing on the Basque people. They're in the mountains between Spain and France, way up in the mountains. And they're very famous for having a language which nobody can understand where it came from, and genetically being different than everybody else around them, having not been contaminated or mixed at all. So you're going through all the different DNA evidence and everything else, and it's such a highly sophisticated, developed area with different kinds of talking and cross-referencing and everything else. So if you really want to talk to these people, you really have to go deeply into their particular, view of reality, discuss these things. So on more general principles, we can look at it. The next slide. Can you see the next slide, Abhishek?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay. So this is from the National Center for Science Education. This is 82, which is some time ago, and answers to creationist attacks on carbon dating. Okay. Now, because they don't care about us, because we're small, we're Hindus, we come from a different world. Yeah. But the Christians, okay, there's a lot of those, and a lot of them are trying to say that the world was created, I think it was like 10,000 years ago or something, So then these are their arguments from the scientific side about the creationist ideas from the Christians. Radiocarbon dating, they say, can easily establish that human beings have been on Earth for over 20,000 years, at least twice as long as creationists are willing to allow. Therefore, it should come as no surprise that creationists at the Institute for Creation Research, ICR, have been trying desperately to discredit this method for years. They have their work cut out for them, however, because radiocarbon dating is one of the most reliable of all the radiometric dating methods. And there are other using argon and other things like that. So just beginning to research a little bit, they quote articles from the Britannica, which is accessible to everybody, and right in there you can find many problems. For example, one of the problems is the Britannica says that it is assumed that the quantity of carbon-14 being produced is constant, okay? Because we find so much of it in different animals like that, after a certain amount of time, because half of it's gone by decay. But what if it's not constant? What if during some time a lot more of it's being produced, and the animals when they're eating, the cavemen when they're eating, they get a lot more. So that would make them appear to be much younger than they are. Or if it's less being produced in the higher atmosphere, then that would make them appear to be less, and so on. So actually, they themselves admit they've had to recalibrate some of their measurements because they accept now that, well, yeah, the sun does go through 17-year cycles, and therefore the amount of radiocarbon is going to be different. We have to readjust our graphs. This is one very, very, very serious thing. Okay? And of course, they try to get around these things. This is science. For every objection that we try and do some kind of solution. So in some ways, it's an endless argument. But one citation they have in this article was, without rather special developmental work, it is generally not practical to measure ages in excess of about 20,000 years, because the radioactivity of the carbon becomes so slight that it is difficult to get an accurate measurement above background radiation. This is from their journal on page 108. It's interesting. So, because, okay, there was no Ram, but Ram was 1 million years ago. Okay. There was, Lucy existed 100 million years ago in evolutionary cycles. So right away, they're saying that really the method doesn't really give any practical things beyond 20,000 years. But of course, Krishna was more recent. So, another thing. So what they're trying to do to establish this, because they can't get like people's bones they can identify and anything else that old, So what they're doing then is trying to use trees, very old trees. Okay. So you take a very, very old tree and you can see the different rings in it. And the idea is that every every year there's a growth ring. It grows a lot because of changing in the weather. There's a rainy season, there's a dry season. So by counting the number of rings, you can figure out how old a tree is. Okay. This says there are two ways of dating wood from bristlecone pines. Not all trees are suitable for this, but they like the ones, some of them in Europe and some in New Mexico and so on. Bristlecone pines. It said two ways for dating them. One can count the rings, or one can radiocarbon date the wood. Okay. Since the tree ring counts have reliably dated some specimens of wood all the way back to 6,200 BC, one can check out the carbon-14 dates against the tree ring dates. Admittedly, this old wood comes from trees that have been dead, it says here, for hundreds of years. Hey, these are petrified trees that are thousands and thousands of years they've been dead. But you don't have to have an 8,200-year-old bristlecone pine alive today to validly date that sort of thing. It is easy to correlate the inner rings of a younger living tree with the outer rings of an older dead tree. Okay, so this is like passing on the baton in the Olympics. I look at the rings on an old tree. Of course, the outer ones are the oldest. So I take some of the inner, I gotta get this backwards here. Some of the inner rings, and I can see, okay, it's this fat, this narrow, this narrow, this narrow, this fat, kind of like bar graph reading. You know? Then I compare that with younger trees, and I say, okay, this is, I can overlap these. This date of a lot of rain has to match up with this one. So it's already a little bit iffy, but we're overlapping them. Okay, and then we can go back and overlap this one, overlap this one. In this way, they're actually going back through many trees. And even they admit the match isn't all that accurate necessarily, but it's good enough. You know? So right away, there's something critical in terms of actually finding, even probably says over 2,000 years, they don't know what's going on. And then we have live trees, live trees and so on. So right away, this is one criticism we have in terms of overlapping petrified trees. And I don't know, if the petrified trees, I guess the carbon-14 dating is still decreasing or something, yeah. So here's some of the actual problems with the system. And it would take somebody who's much more, expert in these areas to maybe go into the details of their arguments and these kind of things. Of course, Lord Chaitanya, when he was arguing with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was, dealing with these things in a very precise fashion. Rupa Jiva Goswami taking all the arguments of Shankara and defeating them one after another, dealing with them, explaining them. And so in this modern world, we see Prabhupada was very, 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 very concerned. Oh, here it is, yeah. Prabhupada was very concerned about this science preaching. And it's not like, well, why are we talking about this? So we see here Prabhupada with Srupdamana Maharaj, he was always pushing him to be able to explain these things to satisfy our own intelligence, that there really was a Dwapara Yuga. Well, how can it be if there's carbon dating and things like that? Because there's a thoroughgoing change. And even if you're looking at these trees changing, trees change, the changes in the sun's rate of radiation would not have been visible, about 1,000 years ago. Nobody would have known it was happening pretty much. And maybe it would have caused growth rings, double growth rings within 1 year, or would have suppressed things like that. So many very simple arguments, which are not really bizarre, but actually, if you look at them, are pretty simple discussions about, how can you assume that beyond, the current dates of living trees and how we can match these up with historical events, which we really can in a large degree, that your method of measuring is accurate. And that 5,000 years ago, things weren't different. And as things have come down in Kali Yuga, whatever results we have in terms of petrified trees or living trees, like the big redwoods in California, that they themselves have not adjusted in terms of the changing atmosphere of the Kali Yuga and so on. So kind of a little bit of a summary of these points, and that there really, really was a Krishna. And of course, we're taking this from Parampara, This is Uddhava was talking to Vidura and saying, "Oh, sober one." Just like we're sober people, and we're willing to admit that okay, the evidence is not there, you know. But you know, it doesn't matter because Prabhupada says even if there is no Krishna, this is the best way to live. You know, okay. Other than that, science produces such a hellish view of reality, so sterile everything else. The scientists have to get drunk or something else, you know, because it is so limited for one thing. You know? And the next thing is that there really was a Krishna, and we're hearing this from Prabhupada. You know Prabhupada, you see how sober he is, how profound his intelligence is, and how much his introspective and meditative abilities are so developed that one can go beyond the scientific methods of investigation. You know, it's a whole different topic. And he's saying, I learned this education, this system, this yoga from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And he also is passing these things down with full appreciation of his guru, very transparent line. So we have to know Prabhupada that well to understand that these scientific facts are actually truth. Like that. This is our little presentation for today. Of course, it's a very wonderful festival, and I hope it's touching everybody's heart. This whole Kartik is touching everybody's heart. So any comments or questions?
A very wonderful perspective about seeing where we're coming from, what we're following. Yeah, and your place in Peru is wonderful, Maharaj. A nice, nice house.
I have a video. We're trying to get everything together here. It's taking some time, but I think we're on schedule. And I did a video.
When you are coming, what your schedule said when you're coming back to Murphisboro?
Okay. 2 weeks, we're doing Govardhan Puja now. We're recording it with video cameras and history is very nice. And we're getting nice cooperation. We're integrating with the temple. Temple's just 20 minutes away. And so we have very, very nice integration. We're beyond it. Beautiful place. We're at 3,000 feet. And all the animals are friendly here. You know, I did a video and we finally got it up, but I have to send the link off. It's on the YouTube. And it shows a beautiful place, about 3 acres, you know, nice garden areas. And it's the house is like the roof and stuff, everything. It's just like made of adobe. The artist lady owns it. So she's coming back from Paris in about maybe 2 more weeks. And she has a Ramayana she's been doing, you know, so she also wants to, that's why she gave us $500 a month less on the place, because she wants to join making the movie, you know. So with her, we'll work out some parts of the Ramayana and record it for the movie. Very good director. He's a very young guy. He's just so enthusiastic, you know. Then in December, we'll do a program with San Marcos in December. Then Radhika's coming, Shubhra, everybody. We'll have a lot of people here on education. We're accommodating everybody. And then Vyasa Puja, a lot of people. So we're going to have a lot of individual interviews. We've got the place set up for doing interviews now. Miguel Polo, the Jesuits. And then in January, Vyasa Puja is the beginning of January, and the director wants to stop then and edit everything to make a really good movie. His thing is he wants to see it on Netflix. He wants to see something that people say, wow, this is good, you know, good thing. And by then we should be ready to do a lot of filming in Houston. So we come back on the 7th of March, like that, okay? And if we sit in Houston for 10 days, that'll be Gorpurnima, maybe record everything by then, and then be back in Nashville by like the 17th, maybe just right after Gorpurnima. Then we're thinking of staying for about 5 months, you know, yeah. Maybe a trip to other places. I mean, Abhishek, we got to kidnap him sometime to come down here, yeah, as a representative. He come as a representative, yeah. And then of course Europe, and then Radhakund, and then we're gonna dissolve our body into Radhakund, this body, and then we're gonna come back as in ISKCON and join the Gurukula in our next lifetime. So we're really promoting good Gurukula system. Yeah, we all have to work on that, no? Otherwise it could be a big problem. Yeah. So it's so nice to talk to everybody, see everybody. We're reading all the comments and everything else, you know. Yeah.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments from Maharaj?
You
Maharaj,
like
you
my
will be,
monkey? You like my monkeys in the background here?
yes,
Yeah,
Maharaj.
Maharaj, absolutely.
Deer too. Uh, Maharaj, you'll be here next Friday, isn't it?
Ah, see. We're still getting the schedule settled down.
But Friday is your day, Maharaj. For
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, one thing is that next Saturday night daylight saving time starts.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Now
so that
here
means
starts the day this weekend, Maharaj. Sunday.
this weekend. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, yeah.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay. Oh, it's interesting. I mean, tomorrow night it starts.
Yes.
Yeah, Maharaj, tomorrow night.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we're miscalculating that we have a program tomorrow morning. We got to watch that. Okay, so that means that we don't change it here. So when it's 8 o'clock at night here, it's gonna fall back?
It will be fall back.
So it'll be 7:30 in your time, right?
What will be?
Yeah, that was always confusing.
Yeah,
And that was right. 8 o'clock here will be 7 o'clock your time.
yeah.
Okay, so that means if we join the program at what time is the program normally?
Eight, Maharaj.
So that means it'll be 9 o'clock at night here. Anyway, yeah, we don't worry. Nobody escapes from the burrow like that.
Thank
You
you,
can
Maharaj.
take the boy out of the burrow, but you can't take the burrow out of the boy.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yes. Okay, we'll go now and eat Govardhan Hill.
Okay, Maharaj.
Thanks to everybody.
Maharaj,
Hare
thank
Krishna,
you.
Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare
Krishna
Krishna.
Maharaj. So
Hare
wonderful to see you.
Hare
So
Krishna
wonderful to
Maharaj.
see you. Thank you
Krishna
for
Maharaj.
your lecture. Hare
So
Krishna.
many people, so nice.
A lot of people not here, Maharaj, either.
No.
Okay, who's doing
Veena
the
auntie.
who? Veena ji,
Veena.
yeah.
Okay.
Damodar prayer.
Okay. नमामीश्वरं सच्चिदानन्दरूपं लसत्कुण्डलं गोकुले भ्राजमानम् यशोदाभियोलुखिलाद्वावमानं परामृष्टमत्यन्ततो द्रुतगोप्य रुदन्तं मोहनेत्रयुग्मं भृजन्तं कराम्भोजयुग्मेन शान्तङ्कनेत्रम् मुहुश्वासकम्प त्रिरेखाङ्गकण्ठ स्थितग्रैवदामोदरं भक्तिवद्दम् इति दृश्वलीला वीरानन्दकुण्डे स्वघोषं निमज्जन्तमाख्यापयन्तम् तदीयेषितज्ञेषु भक्ते जितर्तं पुनः प्रेमतस्तं सतावृत्तिवन्दे वरं देवमोक्षं न मोक्षं वधिं वा न चान्यं वणेऽहं वरेशादपीय इदं ते वपुरनाथ गोपाल बालं सदा मे मनस्या विरास्तां किमन्ये इदं ते मुखाम्बोजमत्यन्तनीलैर्वृतं कुन्तलस्निग्धरक्तश्च गोप्या मोहश्चम्बितं बिम्बराक्तां धरं मे मनस्या विरास्ताम् अलं लक्ष्यलाभे नमो देव दामोदरानन्त विष्णु प्रसीद प्रभो दुःखजालाब्धिभग्नम् कृपा दृष्टिवृष्ट्यातिदीनं वतानु गृहाणेश मामज्ञमेदक्ष दृश्या कुबेरात्मजो बद्धमूर्त्यवयत्व त्वया मोचितो भक्ति भाजो कृतश्च तथा प्रेम भक्तिं स्वकां मे प्रयच्छ न मोक्षे ग्रहो मे अस्ति दामोदरे नमस्ते अस्तु दाम्ने स्फुरदीप्ति दाम्ने त्वदीयोदरायाथ विश्वस्य धाम्ने नमो राधिकाय त्वदीया प्रियाय नमो अनंत लीलाय देव्याय तुभ्यं नमो राधिकाय त्वदीया प्रियाय नमो अनंत लीलाय देव्याय तुभ्यं नमामीश्वरं सच्चिदानंद रूपं लसत्कुण्डलं गोकुले भ्राजमानं हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय राधा नटवर राधे जय राधा दामोदर राधे। ट्रांसलेशन। जिनका सर्वेश्वर सच्चिदानंद स्वरूप है, जिनके कपोलों पर मकराकृत कुंडल हिलडुल रहे हैं, जो गोकुल नामक दिव्य धाम में परम शोभायमान है, जो दंडी भांड फोड़ने के कारण माँ यशोदा के डर से उखल से दूर दौड़ रहे हैं, किंतु जिन्हें माँ यशोदा ने उनसे भी अधिक वेग पूर्वक दौड़कर पकड़ लिया है, ऐसे भगवान दामोदर को मैं अपना विनम्र प्रणाम अर्पित करता हूँ। माँ के हाथ से लठिया देखकर वे रोते रोते बारंबार अपनी आंखों को अपने दोनों हस्त कमलों से मसल रहे हैं। उनके नेत्र भय से विह्वल है। रुदन के आवेग से सिसकियां लेने के कारण उनके त्रिरेखा युक्त कंठ में पड़ी हुई मोतियों की माला कंपित हो रही है। इन परमेश्वर भगवान दामोदर का, जिनका उदर रस्सियों से नहीं अपितु यशोदा माँ के वात्सल्य प्रेम से बंधा है, मैं प्रणाम करता हूँ। जो ऐसी वाल्य लीलाओं के द्वारा गोकुल वासियों को आनंद सरोवर में डुबोते रहते हैं और अपने ऐश्वर्य ज्ञान में मग्न अपने भक्तों के प्रति यह तथ्य प्रकाशित करते हैं कि उन्हें भय आदर की धारणाओं से मुक्त अतरंग प्रेमी भक्तों द्वारा ही जीता जा सकता है, उन भगवान दामोदर को मैं कोटि कोटि प्रणाम करता हूँ। हे प्रभु, यद्यपि आप हर प्रकार के वर देने में समर्थ हैं, तथापि मैं आपसे न तो मोक्ष अथवा मोक्ष के चरम सीमा रूप वैकुंठ में शाश्वत जीवन और न ही नवधा भक्ति द्वारा प्राप्त कोई अन्य वरदान मांगता हूँ। हे नाथ, मेरी तो बस इतनी ही इच्छा है कि आपका यह वृंदावन का बाल गोपाल रूप मेरे हृदय में सदा प्रकाशित रहे, क्योंकि इसके सिवा मुझे किसी अन्य वरदान से प्रयोजन ही क्या है। हे प्रभु, लालिमा युक्त कोमल श्याम वर्ण के घुंघराले बालों से घिरा हुआ आपका मुख कमल माँ यशोदा के द्वारा बारंबार चुंबित हो रहा है और आपके ओंठ बिंब फल की भांति लाल हैं। आपके मुखमंडल का यह सुंदर दृश्य मेरे हृदय में सदा विराजित रहे। मुझे लाखों प्रकार के दूसरे लाभों की कोई आवश्यकता नहीं। हे भगवान, मैं आपको प्रणाम करता हूँ, मैं आपको प्रणाम करता हूँ। हे दामोदर, हे अनंत, हे विष्णु, हे नाथ, मेरे प्रभु मुझ पर प्रसन्न हो जाइए। मैं दुखों के सागर में डूबा जा रहा हूँ। मेरे ऊपर अपनी कृपा दृष्टि की वर्षा करके मुझ दीनहीन शरणागत का उद्धार कीजिए और मेरे नेत्रों के समक्ष प्रकट हो जाइए। हे भगवान दामोदर, जिस प्रकार आपने दामोदर रूप से नल कबोर और मणिग्रीव नामक कुबेर पुत्रों को नारद जी के शाप से मुक्त कर उन्हें अपना महान भक्त बना लिया था, उसी प्रकार आप मुझे भी आप अपनी प्रेम भक्ति प्रदान कर दीजिए। यही मेरा एकमात्र आग्रह है। मुझे किसी भी प्रकार के मोक्ष की कोई इच्छा नहीं है। हे भगवान दामोदर, मैं सर्वप्रथम आपके उदर को बांधने वाली दीप्तिमान रस्सी को प्रणाम करता हूँ। आपकी प्रियतमा श्रीमती राधा रानी के चरणों में मेरा सादर प्रणाम है और अनंत लीलाएं करने वाले आप परमेश्वर को मेरा प्रणाम है। दामोदर अष्टकम की जय।
Thank you, Auntie. So, Abe, Uncle, can you sing the Nishinga prayer?
Sure. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Prahlad Lad Daine. Nyakashi Purvashaha. Shilatanka Nakhalaye. तो नरसिंहो पर तो नरसिंहो यतो यतो यान ततो नरसिंहो हृदय नरसिंहो हृदय नरसिंहो नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे तब कर कमलाभरे नखा अद्भुत श्रृंगार दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृंगा केशबधिरता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 नरसिंह भगवान की जय।
Thank you, Uncle. So that concludes this evening's program. We'll recite the Vaishnava Pranam prayer.
वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो